Water of Leith winds through the sleepy outskirts of one of Edinburgh's oldest suburbs, the village of Curry. It is here that roughly 10,000 years ago, the first human settlements started to appear along the banks of the river, sparking an ever-evolving relationship that would shape the nation's capital into the city it is today.
This stone marks the site of a Bronze Age kist or burial site from around 1800 BC. Bronze Age settlements were appearing all along the coast of the Water of Leith at this time. These sites, these villages, would eventually evolve into towns and hamlets, which eventually became what we know as Edinburgh today.
Over the following centuries, villages sprang up along the river's edge. As the local population grew, Edinburgh as we know it today began to form. Throughout this period, the people of Edinburgh relied on the river as a source of fresh water and food, fishing from the river itself and hunting the various wildlife that would gather along its banks. However, this harmonious relationship between mankind and the natural world would be thrown into disarray with the turning of the 18th century and the dawn of the Industrial Revolution.
We like to think the Water of Leith was integral to the development of Edinburgh as a city. The mills that were along the river, there was over 70 different mill sites along the Water of Leith at one point, and they made all kinds of things. They fed Edinburgh with the grain, they made paper, which provided the banking and bookmaking industry. There was leather tanneries, there was the glue factories, all kinds of different industry focused on the Water of Leith. And of course the harbour mouth at Leith itself was an important for shipbuilding, trade, import-export, which helped Edinburgh to develop as a city. So while it's a very small river, it is still very significant to the city's development as a whole.
One area in particular that benefited from Edinburgh's growth was Dean Village. The village has been around for over 800 years, nestled in the high banks of the river. It was well known for its grain mills, which processed grains from farms around the Edinburgh area into flour for bread making and other foods. Whilst there have been mills in the Dean Village area since the 1100s, they were all relatively small and utilised the water's naturally strong current to power the machinery. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that production around this area began to spike. In 1826, when Dean Village officially became part of the city of Edinburgh, there were 11 mills utilising the same small stretch of water to feed their boilers and power their machines. The impact on the local environment was substantial, with wastewater from the mills pouring directly back into the river itself, turning it a deep grey and driving off the local wildlife. However, the mills of Dean Village were not to last. With larger, more powerful industrial mills opening further downstream in Leith and Bonnington, the area fell into a gradual decline, which peaked in the 1960s, when it was found that Dean Village was one of the most impoverished areas of the city. 10 years later, in 1970, a large-scale renovation of the village began, which revitalised the area and reshaped it into the picturesque historical landmark it is today. In many ways, Dean Village acts as a microcosm for Edinburgh's ever-changing relationship with the Water of Leith, and the changing nature of the city as a whole. As the river finally meets the cold, unforgiving waters of the Firth of Forth, you find the final and perhaps the most significant settlement along the water. Leith, much like Dean Village, has been an established settlement in the Lothian region from as far back as 1128, with Holyrood Abbey being its oldest surviving building. Leith has played a significant role in Edinburgh and indeed Scotland's history since its creation. The village acted as a prominent port which allowed foreign goods to pass into the city. It was also a substantial fishing village, and in the Leith docks, Edinburgh's shipbuilding industry thrived. The village of Leith was also the stage for an important battle during the Scottish Reformation. In 1560, Mary of Guise, proxy ruler to Mary Queen of Scots, was residing in Leith during an invasion by the Scottish Protestant lords supported by the English. The battle left over 1,000 dead, and there are still marks on the landscape to this day. It wasn't until 1920 that Leith was officially merged with the city of Edinburgh. By that time, the borough had become Edinburgh's industrial heart, with factories producing all manner of goods, ranging from luxury items including glass, soap and whisky, to large-scale industries including shipbuilding, Scotland's largest leadworks, and even whaling. Leith served as the industrial centre for Edinburgh for decades. However, the area slowly declined into the late 20th century, with almost all of the mills, ports and docks lost by the 1980s. The area today still has reminders of Leith's golden age around every corner, and the docks, which were once used to construct naval vessels and commercial fishing boats, are now home to a range of small seafood restaurants and the occasional geological survey vessel.
It wasn't until 1974, with the passing of the Control of Pollution Act, that Edinburgh's relationship with the Water of Leith began to change, focusing less on industry and using the water to power the various factories that ran along the course of the river. Instead, we decided to focus on working with the river to clean it and allow the natural wildlife of the river to flourish again.
The Act prevented businesses from using the river water as part of the manufacturing process, and prevented the disposal of harmful substances into Scotland's water networks. This change in legislation changed the way the Scottish people viewed the natural world. Gone were the days of profiting off of the destruction of the environment by polluting the habitats of local plant and animal life. Instead, a new generation led the way in taking steps to clean our waterways and revitalise our natural world. For the first time in over a century, Edinburgh was starting to reform its relationship with the Water of Leith to create a better environment for its people and the wildlife in this region. To this day, conservation efforts continue, and with help from organisations like the Water of Leith Conservation Trust, the Water of Leith is one of the cleanest and most accessible rivers in the whole of Scotland.
Well, the Water of Leith Conservation Trust was the first river charity to be established in Scotland, so not to blow our own trumpet, but I think we're way ahead of a lot of other urban rivers and urban watercourses. We've got a walkway along the whole stretch of, well, certainly 12 3/4 miles of it anyway, that people can walk and explore. We do around 100 tasks a year with volunteers to keep on top of issues like access, rubbish, invasive species, and also manage projects and habitats along the river. So the Water of Leith is quite intensively managed, but also it needs to be. And the proof of that is the fact that we've got nesting kingfishers and otters right in the middle of Edinburgh.
It is clear that throughout our millennia-long journey, the Water of Leith has played a pivotal role in the foundation and formation of our nation's capital. Throughout the ages, it has been a source of food, clean water and power, allowing Edinburgh to grow into the city it is today. As we move on into the future, organisations like the Water of Leith Conservation Trust believe that education is the way to ensure that a new generation can continue to live in harmony with the small but vital stretch of water.
It's very important to educate our young people about the natural environment. We have a schools programme from nursery through to advanced higher biology and geography students coming along to learn about the natural environment at all its stages. I think if you encourage children to appreciate nature and get out there and touch it and feel it and smell it and squelch it and enjoy it, then they'll grow up appreciating it and wanting to care for the future.
Whatever the case may be, it is clear that what started with the end of an age of ice and the creation of a narrow, winding river allowed one of the most important cities in the world to flourish.